Good afternoon, everybody. Please give us a few minutes to let everybody join and we'll get started. Okay, just about another minute. We're waiting for the stragglers to come on in and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome everybody. Today we'll be doing the solicitation conference for the Public Cloud Manager DIR-CPO-STS-585. We're going to go over a couple housekeeping rules. Please click the raise hand icon just to confirm you can hear us. Alrighty, thank you for that. Okay, you can change audio by switching between computer audio and phone call. Attendees are muted. The handout will be made available in addendums. Please allow any questions in the Q&A, not the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Darren now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Darren Jones, the procurement lead for this RFO. These are the others who will be speaking today as we go through the presentation. We have Teresa Williamson, our Hub Program Manager, Jody Erickson, our Director of Shared Services Finance, Michelle Romero, our Assistant General Counsel, Sally Ward, our Director of STS Vendor Management, and Marie Cohen, the Statewide Digital Accessibility Program Administrator. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. The agenda today will go over the shared technology services, request for offer, response submission, evaluation criteria, discussions and invitations to negotiate, the Hub subcontracting plan, digital accessibility forms, matters of law and exceptions, general information and submitting questions, and then we'll reach the end. Next. First, though, the DIR is recording this conference and will post the recording as well as a list of conference attendees and slides as an addendum on the SBD. Questions submitted during and prior to this conference and during the entire question period will be answered via an addendum on the posted to the ESBD. Webinar participants may continue to submit questions until the questions deadline identified in the RFO schedule of events. You should check the SBD frequently for updates. Next, please. For an overview of shared technology services, I'll hand things over to Sally Ward. Sally?
Thank you, Darren. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sally Ward. I'm the Director of Shared Technology Services Vendor Management Office, and I'm going to talk to you today about the scope within this RFO for Public Cloud Manager. You can go to the next slide. here's our value statement for our shared technology services program. And draw your attention to the blue, light blue words at the top: secure, reliable, cost-effective, and modern. Our value for the state is that within this program and all the services that we provide, we give assurances that it's secure, that the services are reliable, that the services and the technology is cost-effective for the state, and that we maintain a modern environment such that we are not continually generating legacy debt. You can go to the next slide. This slide articulates our vision that we speak to our customers and our legislators, those that appropriate funds to our customers to buy the services that they receive within shared technology services. Our vision is to provide excellent value for the taxpayer dollar. And in particular, our goal is to be able to provide those technology solutions that once were only feasible for an agency with a very large budget, that those services and solutions can be made available to even the smallest of governmental entities by bonding together into this shared technology services. Secondly, we look to ensure the highest quality and the least amount of risk when we bring together a best-in-class vendor model where we are procuring various vendors' corporate competencies that are unique to that level and that technology, and we bring them together in a very innovative and flexible manner. We also want to harness the collective size and volume of Texas so that we can get those enterprise class, best in industry technology services for everyone. And we talk to our agencies a lot and our legislative funding or sources, that when agencies handle their own IT operations, they get the best that their IT team can offer and the best that their funding can support. Through shared technology services, we believe our vision is that state agencies receive the best that the entire industry in Texas has to offer. Next slide. So this is our shared technology services model. You can see in the boxes on the bottom the various service components that make up our shared technology services. All of these are brought together by a multi-sourcing services integrator model to integrate all of these services together for our customers. Today, we are going to be talking about the public cloud manager that's under the data center services box. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the service integration model and what our goals are, what you can expect to see within the scope of work of this RFO. Our goals are to leverage our MSI as our service integrator in order to provide a single point of contact to the customer into our program and seamless service delivery across all of our providers. In order to do that, to meet that goal, that requires that all of the service providers must collaborate and share operating agreements within shared technology services. You can go to the next slide. So this is what we mean when we say we expect service component providers to collaborate. Within the scope of work, you will see collaboration as a requirement. And I've pulled a few of the quotes here that you will see in your RFO that's been posted. The requirement to collaborate and work in good faith with third parties is paramount. Operating agreements are required also in our scope of work, that you develop whatever operating agreements that you might need in order to provide that single service delivery to customers to meet the outcomes that those customers expect when they are outsourcing all of their services to DIR. The service level agreements, some of them are what we call related. In other words, the MSI and service component providers may share in how they are measured for certain service level agreements. We do that to ensure that the customer gets that outcome, not just a process, but a true outcome. In order to meet those SLAs, then it's imperative that each service component provider then creates the operating agreements with the other third-party service component providers that they might need in order to deliver to those SLAs. And we do allow for a governance escalation in the event that a service component provider fails to perform, causing another service component provider to miss their SLA. And that service component provider has done all the steps necessary to work through the operating agreements and collaboration and notification to DIR. If it's still that a service component provider is harmed in an SLA for something outside of its control, we allow a governance escalation for you, the service component provider, to seek relief from that SLA. Next slide. This is representative of our current multi-sourcing services integrator tools and platform. You can see on the left, we have our service component providers listed, all the variety of service component providers that we have. On the far right, you can see the various different customers and users that are integrated into the system. In the center, then, you can see all of the tools and processes that the MSI is providing for the service component providers. The point of this is there is a platform for each service component provider to use for governance, SLAs, the marketplace, administration, so forth, that you don't have to create that on your own. And therefore, we do not expect to see that in your response as a cost. That we do expect to see, and you are required to use the tools and the platform that is provided through our MSI. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the governance model that we have for shared technology services. Our model is based on an owner-operator approach, in which a customer is both the owner and the operator of their services that they receive from our shared technology services vendors. So we expect that our customers are actively working directly with all the service providers, and they will resolve any operational issues on the local level specific to that customer, and that they will participate in the committees that we have structured to address the more enterprise matters. Next slide. Our framework then involves customers at all levels, from entry level, technical, all the way up to business executive. We've established a representational model where we have grouped our customers into 5 different partner groups. And each partner group is responsible for electing a representative from that partner group to sit on each of our solution groups and committees. That way we have a smaller, more agile group that can make decisions and resolve issues in a nimble and agile way. Our solution group and our framework is designed to resolve issues and to make strategic decisions. It is not an advisory committee. It doesn't just advise DIR. Our customers and our service component providers are members of each of these solution groups, and they are designed for everyone to work together to resolve issues and make decisions. Our governance model also provides a single voice to our vendors, that you have the assurance that our standards and our architecture that we've chosen, our reference architecture, is what all the customers have adopted and agreed to. So we all have accepted to share in the governance as well as the services that are being provided. And our model drives consensus-based decision-making. We do have escalation paths when decisions can't be made in a consensus-based manner and ways to resolve those. Next slide. You'll find this governance framework is in your RFO. These are the various solution groups that we have established that are all under the authority of our IT Leadership Committee. And our IT Leadership Committee reports into our Business Executive Leadership Committee. The Public Cloud Solution Group is the solution group associated with this Public Cloud Manager scope of work. So this scope of work does require participation in this Public Cloud Solution Group and IT Leadership Committee. You can go to the next slide. A little bit of background on our public cloud. Public cloud is one of our services within our data center services program to include mainframe and private cloud services. Right now, we have about 35% of our installed computer services are in the public cloud. We do expect continued growth and focus on using public cloud services within our data center services program. And we have over 30 customers that are using our cloud services, and that has doubled, that spend has doubled since fiscal year 21. Next slide. We have a vision for this particular RFO for Public Cloud Manager that embodies what we are seeking in total with this scope of work. Our vision is to provide government customers public cloud managed services that are secure and allow customers robust access and control. Our vision is to deliver operational excellence, to be scalable and innovative in a multi-cloud vendor model. And we have adopted a multi-cloud, and we intend to retain a multi-cloud model with our 4 current cloud models of Amazon, Azure, Google, and Oracle. We want to be able to deliver consistent excellence, consistent service delivery that is excellent every single time, regardless of which employee is delivering that service. We want to focus on standardization and cloud-centric delivery capabilities, and we want to be able to address a broad set of customer maturity models. We do have some customers in the program that are not as mature in public cloud and need more assistance, education, and guidance. And we need some customers have very mature models, and they need more access and abilities to grow. We do expect education from the service component provider, our Cloud Center of Excellence, to deliver to our customers those best in breed and reference architectures and guidance and training that are necessary to ensure that we are developing our cloud technology in a manner that is sustainable, both from a maintenance and operations perspective, security perspective, and a financial perspective. We want to be able to provide good financial insight into the technology that is being stood up and helping to educate our customers where they can best manage their resources to get what they need, but not overspend. Our desired outcomes are quite simple. Security is job one. Security is first. Another outcome is we want to improve our customers' experience within the program. We want to continue to provide choice, and we want cloud-centric delivery of services. We are expecting a simplified and competitive pricing model and enhancing the agility and speed with which we can bring new cloud services to our data center services program and market, and providing innovation every time we expand our capabilities. Next slide. To put into perspective the public cloud services RFO, it's good to see the other areas that are related. DIR retains, as you see in the yellow center, some of these services and features and control over the program. We also have a security operations vendor that's going to provide policy and oversight and monitoring and privileged access management and all these security controls. And we do that for all of our service component providers. The MSI retains certain requirements: IT business management, operations, financial management, service level management, all retained within the MSI. For managed security services, or MSS, the cybersecurity assessments are done through that program. And then a lot of non-DCS device monitoring and incident response is handled through MSS, which is within the public cloud manager, part of the public cloud manager's responsibility within this scope of work. And then finally, our technology solution services, or TSS, does provide solution management, oversight, workload hosting reviews, and provides customer technical architects. Next slide. So in our services responsibilities matrix, you by now have seen that we have two levels of services for IaaS: semi-managed and fully managed. And so we tried to partake these two service levels to try to explain to our bidders as well as our customers, what does that mean? Who is responsible for what? And you can see on this slide where the light blue box is for public cloud manager, where your responsibility would reside for IaaS semi-managed in the first tower, IaaS fully managed in the middle tower, and then PaaS. You can go to the next slide. In this next slide, we look at the same structure, but from a security perspective. Oh, we forgot to, sorry about that. We do have the extra boxes there. I didn't catch that. All right, moving on to security. You'll see we added the security SCP and what their role and responsibility is, as well as the DIR customers' responsibility when it comes to security. You'll see where public cloud managers' security responsibilities reside and where the cloud service providers' responsibilities reside. Next slide. These are the key service personnel that we are requiring as a part of this scope of work, and they are listed on the left. You'll all note at the end, we say other respondent proposed. That means if there is a key position, a key service, if you will, in your proposal that you believe should be represented as one of our key personnel, we invite you to offer that as a part of your proposal. For all of these positions, we do require a 24-month commitment minimum from contract execution. We also require an org chart for these positions that clearly define the levels of authority and accountability for all of the management aspects of this contract. We also require that you tell us what % of a full-time equivalent do you expect to dedicate to the PCM program for each of these roles. And when we say dedicated, I'll define that as how much of their time do you expect will be spent on PCM services? You may say, well, they're dedicated to PCM and they're also dedicated to some other accounts too. They're not going to do anything but those several accounts. That's not what we mean by dedicated. We mean what percentage of that full-time equivalent do you expect will be spent working on and dedicated to PCM services? And lastly, we always take the opportunity to periodically review roles and responsibilities and assignments and capabilities to ensure that we have a very solid performing team. You can go to the next slide. Our performance management model is comprised of two capabilities. One is service level agreements, and they are categorized by either critical or key. Critical service levels are those with which we attach financial credits. Key are those service levels that we manage and we monitor and report, but do not have a financial credit assigned. The other part of our model includes critical deliverables, some that do have financial credits attached. We also have a model where we are attempting to incentivize performance. We are not trying to garner financial credits. So we include financial credit earn back opportunities if in service delivery an SLA is missed. We also maintain a unilateral right to add, modify, elevate, and delete SLAs. We do this because we do expect strong service delivery across all areas of performance and not just those that are monitored. So we want you to know that if you only propose to the critical SLAs, you will be missing this piece of our requirement. And as I said before, there are related SLAs between the MSI and certain SCPs to help incentivize that outcome performance. And finally, we do require service level improvement plans whenever a critical measure is missed at the enterprise level for all of our customers, or if a critical service level is missed at the customer level. Why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that one customer is not negatively impacted routinely while the enterprise SLA continues to be green. This provides our customers assurance that if there is an issue at the customer level, that there are processes in place to ensure that that performance is corrected. We do also require service level improvement plans when key measures are missed at the enterprise level. Next slide. We are asking for several transformation projects. They must be included with your solution proposal. DIR may or may not choose to exercise that project. If we do select that project, the project would begin post commencement of services date. Some of the major project elements are including IP addressing assessment and a system tooling and policy remediation assessment. Next slide. So in summary, when we were asked, what is important to you, DIR, in this RFO? What are you looking for? This is the map that popped out of the things that we found to be important: service evolution, innovation, multi-supplier, turning data into insight. These are the things that we are looking for from this solicitation. And with that, I'll leave it and turn it back to Darren.
All right, thank you, Sally. That was a great job. So next slide, we're going to look at the RFO and the general RFO information, the RFO contents, requirements, term of contract, and the schedule for this RFO. Next slide, please. So the general information is as follows. As stated, DIR seeks a successful respondent to serve as PCM service component provider, transitioning management of DIR's current PCM to the successful respondent. As a result of this RFO, DIR expects to receive and evaluate responses and select one service component provider for this RFO with whom to enter into a contract. The vendors and subcontractors performing the multi-sourcing services integrator, technology solution services, and security operations functions for the DCS program are precluded from this award and the contract resulting from this RFO due to the oversight functions and independence required for these functions. Likewise, the successful respondent and its subcontractors will be precluded from functioning as a public cloud provider within the DCS program. Next slide, please. Okay, the contents of the RFO includes the request for offer and these 8 attachments: respondent information form, hub subcontracting plan, policy-driven adoption for accessibility, voluntary product accessibility template, vendor accessibility development services information requests, respondent release of liability, exceptions, financial ability minimum qualification attestation. There are also the exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the statement of work with the attachments and appendices. The attachments are service level and deliverable matrix, service level definitions, SMM content and organization, key personnel, and reports. Exhibit 2, the financial provisions and pricing requirements, has these attachments: pricing and volumes, financial responsibility matrix. Next slide. The request for offer contract documents include the master services agreement with the following attachments: definitions, insurance and risk of loss, form of source code escrow, form of parent guarantee, and the CJIS security addendum. Next slide. The requirements. DIR seeks a successful respondent to serve as public cloud manager, transitioning management of DIR's public cloud manager to the successful respondent. The minimum qualification requirements are 5 or more years experience providing similar services as stated in Exhibit 1, the SOW. Held at least 3 contracts for similar major activities within the last 5 years, and has a minimum annual contract value of $25 million per contract, excluding cloud services provider spend of approximately $30 million annually. The respondent has the ability to meet the following contractual requirements: O365 purchases in excess of $55 million recovered in arrears in a 12-month pro rata period. Respondent is required to pay the incumbent for prepaid O365 licenses for the license period after commencement until the first renewal term, if any. The estimated prepaid amount is $13 million. SSC and SAASC purchases in excess of $50 million annually that are recovered 60 days in arrears. Next slide. So the term of the contract, DIR anticipates the term of the contract will be estimated at 4 years with an optional renewals for up to 4 years, or a total contract award of no more than 8 years to be exercised by DIR at its discretion. Next slide. So here's the schedule, the planned schedule of events as we have it today. The solicitation conference is today, starting at 2 o'clock. The deadline for submitting RFO questions is May 24th at 2 p.m. The deadline for submitting responses is June 28th at 2 p.m. The evaluation clarification amended responses period will run June through August. Due diligence integration sessions and final negotiations will run August through November. Award recommendation will occur in December. The governing board authorization should occur in January, and then the transition will go from date of award through August 31st of 2025. Next slide. We've set up a digital data room for this RFO. It's called out in section 3.3.1.2. And it's to aid respondents in preparing their RFO. Please follow the instructions for gaining access to this RFO using the link shown here, which is also included in the RFO. Once you've downloaded, signed the NDA, it's been processed, and access has been granted. DIR will make a determination and notify the prospective respondent of its decision. DIR will continue to add information to the digital data room throughout this procurement. Updates will be announced via addendum. Check the SBD regularly to avoid missing important procurement-related information. And also, we encourage you to go through the digital data room information before asking questions, because many of the questions we find are answered by the information contained therein. Next slide. So response submissions we'll go over the response contents, required response files, important things to remember, and a word on references. Next slide. Response contents, this is what you're submitting. Submission instructions in the RFO include instructions for 4 packages that should be submitted as 4 separate zip folders with the required files prescribed for each package in the zip folder. Response package 1 is the administrative submission requirements. Response package 2 is response to services requirements. Response package 3 is service pricing. And response package 4 is hub subcontracting plans. Respondents shall respond electronically via email, providing responses in an electronic format. Microsoft Word files submitted together in a zip folder at the date and time specified in section 3.3, schedule of events, to the email address you see here. Next slide, please. Okay. The required response files in the administrative section, defined in 3.5.12, response package 1, the administrative submission requirements. Respondent must provide the items listed below, or the response may be rejected. You have the transmittal letter and executive summary. Attachment A, the respondent information form, qualification requirements, qualification references, financial information, addenda to the RFO. Attachment C, the policy-driven adoption for accessibility. Attachment D, the accessibility conformance report. Attachment E, the vendor accessibility development services information request. Attachment F, the respondent release of liability. And attachment H, the financial ability minimum qualification attestation. Be careful to follow the format that has been provided on the right-hand side of this slide. Next slide, please. For respondent package 2 in section 3.5.13.1, response to the services requirements. The respondent must provide the items listed below, or the response may be rejected. Technical solution summary, transition approach and methodology, transition project plan in MS Project and PDF, respondent experience, terminated contract disclosure, proposed account organization, and attachment G for exceptions. Again, follow the formatting closely as displayed on the right-hand side of this slide. Next slide, please. Section 3.5.14 is for response package 3, service pricing. Again, respondent must provide the items listed below, or the response may be rejected. Attachment 2.1, pricing, following the formatting. Section 3.5.15 for response package 4, completed hub subcontracting plan. Again, respondent must provide the items listed below, or the response may be rejected. That includes attachment B, hub subcontracting plan. Completed. Next slide, please. We're going to hand things over to Jody Erickson to take us up on the pricing once we get to the next slide. Take it away, Jody.
Thanks, Darren. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I'm Jody Erickson. I'm the Director of Shared Services Financial Analysis. I'm going to talk to you about some of the details in the pricing section of the RFO. In particular, we're going to talk about 3 exhibits that make up the pricing portion. This is Exhibit 2, Attachment 2.1, and Attachment 2.2. The first document, sorry, stay on that last slide for a minute, please. You could go back. I'm sorry, can we go back one slide, please? Thank you. The first document is Exhibit 2, which describes, oh my gosh, goodness, it jumped again. Thank you. The first document is Exhibit 2, which describes all the related financial requirements and the methodology for calculating and billing the charges. The second document is Attachment 2.1, which is the main pricing document, and respondents should pay close attention to the instructions tab when completing each section of their pricing proposal. This attachment must be completed and submitted with your response in accordance with the RFO instructions. And finally, the third document is Attachment 2.2, which is an easy reference matrix that identifies who pays for key components of the statement of work and the associated charging mechanism. Exhibit 2, the financial provisions and pricing, and Attachment 2.2, the financial responsibility matrix, are informational and do not need to be returned with your response. Next slide. Thank you. Attachment 2.1 pricing proposal highlights. We'll talk about 5 key areas related to 2.1. The first is respondent assumptions. We would like to ensure that all respondents leverage the Q&A process to attempt to eliminate as many pricing assumptions as possible prior to submitting their proposal. I'll say that again. We'd like you to eliminate pricing assumptions prior to submitting your proposal by using the Q&A process if at all possible. The Q&A process is to obtain information that you need to eliminate any uncertainty and contributes to the need to contributes to the need to include an assumption. If you do decide to include an assumption, marking the pricing impact as to be determined is not an acceptable response. If the assumption does not have a pricing impact, but it's some information you want to share with us, please mark that pricing impact column as 0. The next highlight we want to call out is key considerations. Please make sure your pricing excludes any activities normally included in your pricing that in our model are being provided by the MSI. For rate card, make sure that the rates you propose are inclusive of any anticipated travel and meet our qualifications and experience requirements. And then finally, moving on to transition, all transition related costs must be priced on a milestone basis, and pre-commencement milestones will be accepted as the milestone is achieved and meets our requirements, but will not be invoiced until commencement. Additionally, I'd like to emphasize that we are not expecting large transition costs, as this is an assumption of an existing STS tower with extensive processes already in place. And then finally, we're looking for volume discount as the program grows from aggregating all of our state and local consumption. And we'll talk a little bit more about those volume discounts on the next slide. Next slide, please. And we go to the next slide, please. I'm still seeing attachment 2.1 pricing. Can anyone else on our team see the slide deck at the moment?
We're having some technical difficulties. It'll be just a moment.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you so much. I can see it now, other pricing topics. So I'd also like to highlight some other key pricing topics. The first topic is a pricing model change that moves public cloud support pricing from what it exists today in our current contract, where we split support charges between IaaS and PaaS, to a new model that is a % uplift on CSP charges, regardless of the support tier a customer chooses. So that if you are reviewing our current contract, you will see that represented much different than it is in our current 2.1 pricing model. And we think that is an improvement for our customers, for DIR, and our potential providers going forward. Next are the two different types of volume discounts. The first is the CSP discount. We're asking respondents to disclose in attachment 2.1 the CSP discounts they have negotiated and are offering to DIR and DIR customers as a pass-through. This may either be a discount on essentially the market rate, which is represented in the CSP calculator cost, or through an enterprise discount plan. The second type of discount we're looking for is the one I mentioned earlier, which is an invoice discount against the total monthly invoice amount, as certain tiers of monthly spend are achieved. Respondents should carefully evaluate and propose volume discounts that provide meaningful discounts to the state as public consumption continues to grow. And please pay close attention to approved invoice amount exclusions like the CSP pass-through charge. We also want to make sure that respondents include all CSP costs. So if you need cloud infrastructure to support your solution and tooling, be sure to include that in the applicable resource units, as CSP costs will not be paid for separately by DIR or DIR customers. And then finally, we've spent a good deal of time and gathered a good deal of information to share in our data room, both historical and current PCM spend information is there, and we'd like all respondents to closely review that information when developing your pricing proposals, or if you're looking for an answer to a particular question, so you don't have to document one of those assumptions, it's a good place to start. And I think that is it for me, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jody. Next slide, please. Next slide when you can, please. Okay, the next few slides will be things to remember. I think we may have skipped one. Oh, we jumped ahead. Go back to, there we go. So attachment A, the respondent information form. This form must be filled out in its entirety and signed by an officer or agent empowered to contractually bind the respondent. You will be disqualified if this is not signed. Qualification requirements. Respondent must complete Table 5 qualification requirements and provide a separate Microsoft Word document, a file titled ABC DIR RFO qualification requirements .doc. Other pass-fail criteria can be identified in section 4.2.1 of the RFO. Next slide, please. Okay, attachments C, D, and E are very important. Completed PDAA is required, and failure to provide this self-assessment may lead to disqualification. VADSIR is required for service offerings, and ACRs, completed VPATs, are required for every product offering. Attachment F, the respondent release of liability for references and terminated contracts. This form must be completed so that DIR may contact references for both experience and terminated contracts with any questions or concerns. Failure to provide this form may lead to a respondent receiving a 0 score when the reference information is unclear. Signed addenda. Respondents are encouraged to provide a signed page 1 of each addenda posted to the SBD for this RFO. We also recommend that you contact your references after you've submitted the RFO to let them know DIR may be reaching out to them. Next slide, please. Okay, attachment G, exceptions. Respondents shall note any exception to the using RFO attachment G, as described on the instructions worksheet therein, and return in response as a separate MS Excel document, a file entitled ABC DIR RFO exceptions.xlsx. For each reference provided, the respondent shall provide a signed RFO attachment F, respondent release of liability. And again, we recommend you contacting your references in advance to let them know our DIR may be contacting them. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to look at the evaluation criteria and determining the competitive range. Next slide, please. DIR will review responses to determine responsiveness to this RFO. All determinations about responsiveness to this RFO are within DIR's sole discretion. All responses are determined to be responsive will go through a financial review overseen by the Chief Financial Officer's office. Financial review here, a review for financial solvency of the respondent and completed hub subcontracting plan is a pass-fail determination that is final. Only responses that pass will be considered for award. At any time during the evaluation process, DIR may ask any or all of the respondents to elaborate on or clarify specific points or portions of their response. DIR's request and respondents' response shall be in writing. For section 4.2.1, it lists the pass-fail criteria. These include the DUNS number and report, which is a pass-fail review conducted by the finance group. Completion and signing of the hub subcontract plan. Compliance with the applicable provisions of, I'm not going to read all these laws, but these are the government codes. Respondents may fail this section criterion for any of the following conditions: a score of less than C or legacy unsatisfactory in the vendor performance system. The vendor performance report search webpage is listed here. Currently under a corrective action plan through the TCPA, having repeated negative vendor performance reports. Having purchase orders that have been terminated in the previous 12 months, and it looks like our slide cut off the bottom there. Having purchase orders that have been terminated in the previous 12 months for non-performance, including but not limited to late delivery, etc. It's cut off on the display, but the text is present on the slide. When you download it, you'll see it. Next slide, please. Continuing at 4.2.1. Pass-fail criteria, compliance with Texas Government Code 2054, Subchapter M, TAC 206, TAC 213, and WC3, WCAG 2.0, technical standards as applicable. Respondents may fail this selection criteria for any of the following reasons: missing or incomplete accessibility conformance reports for product listed in the itemized price sheet, missing or incomplete VAD-SIR for proposed development services on the itemized price sheet, or missing or blank PDAA self-assessment. You must also meet minimum experience qualifications as specified in 3.5.12.3 Respondent Qualifications, Table 5 Qualifications Requirement. Next slide, please. Here are the evaluation criteria. DIR will use the following criteria to determine best value for the state. In sections 4.2.2, DIR has identified each evaluation category and associated weighting in descending order. Technical solutions are 40%. Transition service and integration is 25%. Pricing is 20%. Proposed account organization, personnel experience and quality is 10%. Experience is 5%. Next slide, please. Now we can discuss discussions and invitations to negotiate, how it works, what you need to do. Next slide, please. So the key procurement process milestones we have are responses submitted, evaluation of initial responses, discussion sessions, potential RFR01, down select based on RFR01 evaluations, due diligence and integration sessions, potential RFR02, due diligence continued, and negotiations. Now, please note, there's no guarantee for requests for revised offers will take place. Respondents should assume each time a response is submitted that it will be the last opportunity to revise the offer. Also, after response submission and evaluation, a down select may occur. Next slide, please. Okay. Discussion and integration sessions. The state in its discretion may hold a series of discussion sessions with the respondents to ensure complete and accurate understanding of requirements to this RFO. We may at our discretion hold a series of meetings between select respondents and our MSI or other SCPs. These sessions are a great opportunity to gain better understanding of the solicitation and clear up any pricing assumptions that may remain. The RFO is intended to provide respondents with enough information to build their responses, but it is your responsibility to obtain any additional information deemed necessary for the respondent to meet its obligations under the terms of the RFO. Respondents participating in discussion sessions and/or integration sessions may submit a written due diligence plan to DIR as part of an amended response. Next slide, please. Revised offer, DIR in its discretion will make the determination whether to request oral presentations and/or engage in the revised offer process. The revised offer process, if held, may be scored. The revised offer process may be iterative. DIR may request more than one revised offer. DIR reserves the right to continue to evaluate responses until such a point as best value as defined by Texas Government Code Section 2157.003 is obtained for the state. Due diligence is an activity in which selected RFO bidders are allowed to ask more complex questions regarding DIR's needs and current state. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, next slide, please. Award of contract, invitations to negotiate. DIR executive management shall make the decision to award a contract if in the best interest of DIR and the state to do so. The decisions of executive management on any award is final. Any award is made in response to this RFO shall be posted on the SBD under the requisition number RFO DIR-CPO-STS-585 upon execution of a contract. All responses and working papers pursuant to this RFO are not subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act until all contracts resulting from this RFO have been executed. Next slide, please. Next up, we have Teresa Williams on our Hub program. Teresa?
Thank you, Darren. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Williams, and I'm the Hub Program Manager. And let's talk about the importance of your Hub subcontracting plan. Next slide. All right, all vendors, Hub and non-Hub, will complete and sign a Hub subcontracting plan, also known as your HSP. Please visit the link that's provided for you for the most current approved copy of the Hub subcontracting plan. You will be required to download this HSP and complete it. Please do not modify or export the document. It is an editable copy. Next slide. Okay. All respondents, Hub and non-Hub, are required to submit a completed and signed HSP. Failure to submit a completed signed HSP will cause your response to be rejected, and you will not move forward with this solicitation. This is a pass or fail document. There are 3 ways to complete your HSP. The first is to meet or exceed your Hub goal and complete method A. The second is to not meet your Hub goal and complete method B. And the third is to self-perform. Next slide. The Hub goal for this RFO is 26%. If your proposed subcontracting meets or exceeds the 26% Hub goal, you'll complete method A. Be sure to identify all Hub and non-Hub vendors that you'll be subcontracting with, and include the anticipated dollar amounts and expected percentages. So you will complete sections 1, 2, 4, and method A, attachment A. Please do not forget to sign and date your HSP in section 4. Next slide. Okay, if you're going to subcontract below the Hub goal, you'll complete method B. Be sure to solicit a minimum of 3 Hub certified companies and 2 minority trade organizations. With the method B good faith effort, you must allow them 7 working days to respond to you prior to the due date of this RFO. Include your outreach to these entities with your HSP submission. So you'll complete sections 1, 2, 4, and your method B, attachment B. Don't forget to include those approximate dollar amounts and percentages. Please allow yourself plenty of time to complete your method B good faith effort. Please remember that the day that you send out your correspondence is considered day 0. I've seen many companies submit an incomplete method B good faith effort and fail the process because of it. So please give yourself plenty of time to follow through when completing this method. Next slide. Okay, thank you. If you will be self-performing, you will complete sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. In your self-performing justification, you will identify how your company will fulfill a contract with its own staff, equipment, and resources. Please do not say that you will subcontract in the future, or if you need to. We need you to make your case by telling us how you will self-perform a contract should you be awarded. Next slide. My contact information is listed here. We will provide you with a complimentary review of your HSP prior to the due date as time permits. You must contact us no later than 10 business days prior to the due date of this RFO. Take advantage of this complimentary review and remember that when corresponding with the Hub office to make sure that you're including the procurement lead on all correspondence. Thank you, and I'm turning it over to Marie. Next slide, please.
Next, we have Marie to cover our digital accessibility requirements and forms. Marie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marie Cohan. I lead the statewide digital accessibility program, and I'm going to go over the digital accessibility requirements with you. Next slide, please. So digital accessibility refers to the inclusive practice of designing and building technology that removes barriers for people with disabilities. In a nutshell, this is all of our technology that will impact a user. So websites, digital tools, technologies, any kind of applications, managed services, etc. This is governed by Texas Government Code 2054, Subchapter M, and TAC, Texas Administrative Code 206 and 213. And the state of Texas also follows the World Wide Web Consortium WCAG standards, right now at 2.0 AA. Our state of Texas agencies that participate in any of our contracts have the discretion to choose a higher standard, for example, WCAG 2.1 AA. Next slide, please. So there are 3 documents that could potentially be attached to your response. The policy-driven adoption for accessibility, which is a vendor self-assessment. That is a required document, so that will be with all responses. A vendor accessibility development services information request, or VADSR, for non-product offerings. An accessibility conformance report, or ACR, for commercial products. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through the policy-driven adoption for accessibility. This form tends to have some confusion for our vendor community. This is a spreadsheet that will be in your solicitation packet. It is a self-assessment for the responding vendor, and it is regardless of your service or product offering. So this is a scoring sheet that you will complete based on your internal accessibility practices. It does not have anything to do with your products that are in the response or your services that are in the response. This is an assessment of where you are in your accessibility maturity, and this will help us and our customers understand the types of practices that you have as an organization. This form can also be used as a potential roadmap for your organization to help you expand your accessibility maturity. Next slide, please. This is an example of the PDA maturity matrix. And there are 3 main levels: a launch stage, an integrated stage, and an optimal stage. You can go through this at your leisure, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to DIR. Next slide, please. So the Accessibility Conformance Report, or ACR, is a completed VPAT, or Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. This is required for every product offering in your solicitation response. DIR will accept VPAT version 2.3 or higher. The only way you can use a lower VPAT version is if your product has not been changed at all since April 18th of 2020. That is the only way you can use a lower version. I do see versions that are dated from 2014 or 2018, and those typically get scored down because they have not been updated. What the ACR is it is a report card that shows how your product conformed to the WCAG success criteria. Does your product feature support that criteria? Does it partially support? Is it not supported? Is it not applicable, etc.? And you will be matching up against the success criteria for at least WCAG 2.0 AA. Next slide, please. These are the definitions of each of the conformance levels. So again, it's supports with exceptions, does not support, it's either not applicable or it was not evaluated because of a certain standard. If your product has a result of anything besides support, you'll need to provide an explanation in the explanation field. ACRs that are received that do not provide an explanation in that field for each of those standards will be scored down. Next slide, please. These are the different standards or success criteria on the VPAT. It's broken into 4 categories. We're looking for technology that is perceivable, that is operable, understandable, and robust. Basically, does your technology work with people that are using assistive technology? Does it work with in other ways aside from like using a mouse, or is it just keyboard compliant or dependent? Is it understandable to people that may have cognitive issues or some kind of invisible disability like ADD or dyslexia, etc.? And is it robust that it works across all different platforms, all different browsers, etc., if we're talking about websites? Next slide, please. The Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request is unique to DIR. We use this in the state of Texas. It is for development services, and the form actually goes through a series of questions that help us understand what your development lifecycle looks like, how is accessibility incorporated into the lifecycle, how are your developers trained, how do you track defects, etc. So this is only for development services. I do not believe that is part of the scope of this solicitation. So if that's the case, you do not need to submit this form. However, if any point during the engagement, there is some kind of development services required, this form will need to be submitted at that time. Next slide, please. Again, these are the questions that are on the VATSR, and they go basically through, what does your development lifecycle look like? Are your developers trained? How do you track defects? How do you repair defects? And what other kinds of means can you provide in the event of a non-compliance issue? Next slide, please. So DIR provides training for our vendor community. We see you all as partners, and we rely on you to help us provide accessible technology to the state of Texas. There are 4 courses in this training program. It is free of charge. And if you're interested in signing up for the program, you can email me at statewide.accessibility@dir.texas.gov. Please copy Darren Jones on that email request. You need to always have your procurement lead on any communications for this solicitation. Next slide, please. That is the end of my presentation. Again, if you need to reach out to me with questions or to request training, statewide accessibility@dir.texas.gov is my email address, and always copy the procurement lead, who is Darren Jones. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
All right, thanks, Marie. Next slide, please. That'll take us through matters of law and exceptions. We have Michelle Romero. Michelle?
Thanks, Darren. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Romero, Assistant General Counsel to DIR. I'm providing legal support for this procurement. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you an overview of some of the legal considerations for this solicitation, but this is not comprehensive, so please, as always, consult with your legal counsel. The first thing that I want to direct you to is the Master Service Agreement, or MSA. This is in the RFO documents, and it is the controlling contractual document that will be used for any contract awarded as a result of this procurement. This MSA includes a list of the order of precedence for all the documents that will be included in the agreement between DIR and the successful respondent. Please do not ask to substitute our contract templates with any alternate documents of your own. This may result in disqualification. You will note that there are bracketed items in the MSA. These will be completed prior to award, and you will be asked to provide the information necessary to complete those sections. Prior to the contract award, DIR reserves the right to make changes to the MSA if required by law, or if necessary for some other reason. If that is the case, you will be notified if you have been selected for negotiations and given an opportunity to review those changes. Please review this document carefully with both your business and legal teams. If there are any exceptions to this document, you will be required to note those with your initial response. Next slide, please. So talk a little more in depth about the exceptions process for taking exceptions to terms included in the MSA or any of the other RFO documents. So first, I will note that we do strongly discourage respondents from taking any exceptions. DIR's terms and conditions have been heavily vetted. And as always, we ask that you tailor your response to our requirements rather than asking us to make an exception and tailor our requirements to your response. If you require any additional terms, you must also note that in the form of an exception. I also would ask that you be careful to distinguish between the exceptions process and pricing assumptions. These are different processes, and you must follow the appropriate procedures for each as outlined in the RFO. You will use attachment G to note any exceptions, and if you have none, please explicitly state that there are none. Next slide, please. If you must take exceptions, please note that these are considered when determining best value and determining which respondents to proceed with. Exceptions can be disqualifying, and if you take exceptions that are excessive in scope or in volume, or if it's taking too long to resolve your exceptions during negotiations, that may result in your response being removed from consideration. With that in mind, we do recommend very close coordination between your business and legal teams. Make sure that each exception is essential and that your red lines and justifications provided meet the requirements laid out in the RFO. We ask that you not take exceptions to terms that we are legally unable to change. And please be aware that if you do not include an exception in your initial response, you will not be allowed to raise it again at a later date. So make sure that you carefully complete this process with your initial response. Next slide, please. Designated contracts. I think that we have touched on this a few times during this presentation, but I do want to reiterate the importance of this. So vendors and all of your representatives, including your potential subcontractors, are prohibited from discussing this RFO with anyone other than a designated contract, in this case, designated contact, in this case, Darren Jones. The sole exceptions that we covered earlier is you may reach out to Teresa for assistance with your hub subcontracting plan. And if you do have questions about accessibility, you can reach out as directed earlier today and make sure that you do include Darren Jones on any of those contacts. If you have other contacts or other activities with DIR, you may discuss those contracts and those activities with the appropriate personnel, but you may not discuss this solicitation in any way. So even seemingly innocuous questions like, where is DIR in the process? Or what's that deadline again? That's prohibited. Violations of this rule may result in disqualification. Please take this very seriously. We do not want to disqualify vendors, but we won't hesitate to do so if it's necessary to protect the integrity of the procurement. Next slide, please. Just a few notes about the entity name to use when submitting your response. Please use your exact legal entity name. This should match what is registered with the Texas Secretary of State. We use this for several purposes. So during our initial administrative review, financial checks, debarred vendor checks, several other places. So it's important for us to get this right in your initial submission, and that helps the whole process go smoothly. Next slide, please. I want to touch on the Public Information Act. This is also very important to consider as you prepare your submission documents and communicate with the designated contact for the solicitation. So DIR is a state agency, and as such, we're required to comply with the Public Information Act. So all information in our possession is subject to this law, and it's presumed to be public. So that will include your response, as well as all other documents and communications that you submit to us. There are some protections if you have proprietary or confidential information that you're submitting. And if you believe anything in your response is confidential, you are required to submit both a redacted and an unredacted version of your response. So after the procurement is complete, if we get a request for your response, we will release the redacted version without contacting you. And for all other submissions, including the unredacted version of your response, you must clearly mark your information that is proprietary, confidential, or copyrighted. If it's not marked, we will release it to a requester. If the document is marked, we will submit it to the Texas Attorney General if we receive a public information request. At that point, you'll have the right to object to the release of the information, but ultimately the Attorney General's office makes that determination. little bit of marking guidance. Do not just mark a cover page as confidential. If you have multiple pages, distinctly mark each item that you believe is confidential. Please do not just mark everything you submit as confidential. Again, you will have to justify this if it's ever sent to the Attorney General for review. Please also be careful in using email footers that mark every single email as confidential. Again, for this, coordinate carefully with your legal counsel. There have been vendors who did not take these steps to review and mark confidential information, and later were unhappy when documents have been released. And just keep in mind that these contracts, the resulting contracts last for years, as does all the information after the solicitation. So the team members who are marking it today may not be the team members that are talking with the Attorney General when a request is made. So this is your chance to get it right, so it's not a problem years down the road. Next slide, please. With that, I'll hand it back over to Darren.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Now we're approaching the end of the presentation. I want to briefly restate some important takeaways and the Q&A process. So next slide. The sole points of contact regarding this RFO are myself for procurement inquiries and Teresa for hub subcontracting inquiries. Questions submitted prior to this conference will be answered via an addendum posted to the SBD. Any changes or additional information regarding this RFO will be posted as an addendum to the SBD, along with all the questions we receive and generate answers for throughout the question period. Next slide, please. Just to recap the schedule, today is the 9th. We're having the solicitation conference. The deadline for submitting RFO questions is the 24th. The deadline for submitting responses is the 28th of June, all at 2 p.m. Evaluation, clarification, and amended responses period is June through August. Due diligence, integration sessions, and final negotiations are August through November. The award recommendation is December. The governing board authorization is January. The transition is date of award through August 31st, 2025. Now keep in mind, this is a planned schedule. We will do our best to keep to it, but we will alert everyone via ESBD posting should anything change or vary from here. Next slide, please. That's the end of our presentation. Many thanks to all of our presenters today. They did a great job, and thank you to all the attendees as well. I hope everyone has a great day and a great rest of your week. Thank you.